12-year-old Madeline checks her hair in the mirror one last time, grabs her belongings, and heads out to the car where her mother Kara is waiting. She asks her mother to please roll up the window, worried that a classmate might hear Kara's outdated music. The car stops at the middle school entrance, and Madeline quickly gathers her gear and jumps out. Kara calls, "I love you," and Madeline sighs but offers the smallest smile on her face and a wave. Kara drives away, taking some comfort in the smile on her daughter's face as Madeline excitedly joins several friends entering the building. The friends are all wearing the same sneakers and carrying similar backpacks. On her drive to work, a mix of emotions and thoughts cross Kara's mind. Where did my carefree little girl go? Is this the start of her adolescence? Kamoshunhees. Why does she always seem annoyed with me these days? Kamoshumaze. Why is she so concerned about fitting in? Is she too focused on the trends she sees on social media? Did she pack enough food for lunch and her after-school track practice? This chapter explores the field of lifespan development's perspectives and answers to these and many other everyday concerns of adolescence. 17-year-old Armand rushes downstairs with a basket full of his laundry. He loads the washer and readies his change of clothes and water bottle for after-school marching band practice. That evening, after a 3-hour practice, Armand grabs a veggie burger with friends. Back home, he takes a quick shower and starts studying for a big history test. Before he goes to bed, he texts with friends as he unloads the dishwasher. It's only Monday, but he's excitedly anticipating watching the high school football game on Friday night and sleeping in on Saturday. This brief window into the life of an older adolescent leads to some big-picture questions about this period of the lifespan, including what its central developmental tasks are and how psychologists mark progression through them. Adolescence is a time of profound and often rapid change in multiple dimensions, including identity exploration and achievement, and emotional development. These changes necessitate sensitive and accommodating responses from individuals who care for teens, as well as from societal institutions like schools and governments that serve them. What is adolescence? Human development is a series of transitions, particularly so in adolescence, which can bring sudden and dramatic changes, like the onset of puberty, changes in voice, and growth in height. Adolescence is a time many societies set aside for children to transition to adult stature, status, roles, and capabilities. In other countries, children may quickly transition to adult responsibilities, without being afforded the time and space to adjust to this immense developmental shift. For instance, in several Asian and African cultures, adolescents tend to have strong family obligations and responsibilities, emphasizing group harmony and family loyalty. Older adolescents in Cambodia and rural Vietnam assume caretaking tasks and the family supporter's role, Yi, 2015. Teenage girls may face stricter gender roles and fewer opportunities than boys. Early marriage and childbearing are common in Bangladesh, Udin, 2021, and Nigeria, Musa et al., 2021. In weird nations like the United States and Canada, many families consider finishing high school a marker of adulthood, and 18-year-old graduates may begin to work full-time and start their own households, or may enter further schooling or a trade. Adolescence focuses on preparation for adulthood, such as through extended formal education, and it precludes adult status and its markers such as driving and beginning to participate in the workforce. Figure 10.2. The smoothness of the adolescent transition in countries such as the United States and Canada also varies by family composition, cultural beliefs and backgrounds, available opportunities, and socioeconomic status, SES. Adolescents from single-parent families, for example, often help with household tasks like caring for younger siblings, and may even contribute to household finances. Teens who grow up in farming families, or families that own a bodega or other business, may begin to help run the family business, and then continue to do so, if they also enjoy that industry. Teens who show interest in an academic education beyond high school may spend after-school and summer hours in academic enrichment activities. Still, other teens who show interests in craft or trade industries may pursue hobbies such as sewing, electrical work, or woodworking to begin identifying potential occupational options. As these examples show, it is difficult to characterize adolescence in many countries as solely continuous or discontinuous in nature. To understand the complexities of the adolescent transition, consider the developmental tasks associated with it. These are the biologically, psychologically, and socially relevant challenges of adolescence. Haverhurst, 1948, 1972. They include achieving the cognitive development crucial for decision-making, acquiring impulse control and reasoning, developing a sense of self and personal identity, and building friendships while navigating social dynamics to gain a sense of belonging and acceptance. In addition to the biological and physical changes of puberty discussed in Chapter 9, physical and cognitive development in adolescents, ages 12 to 18, adolescents also face several psychological and social developmental tasks. Table 10.1. To the extent that they make individual progress on these tasks, adolescents gradually mature into adulthood. Many societies and cultures use explicit markers to recognize progress toward adult status. Anthropologists call such a marker a rite of passage. Table 10.2 and Figure 10.3 show some examples. Alcorta and Sosis, 2020. Parents, teens, and society alike put much attention and energy into some of these. Notice that no single marker signifies adult status in all areas of life. Psychosocial theory of development. Identity versus role confusion. To a developmental psychologist, a teenager's social struggles and ever-evolving choices illustrate the work of adolescence, actively exploring interests, abilities, strengths, weaknesses, peer relations, and work and community roles. Collectively, these make up the most important psychosocial development task, the formation of identity. Identity, also known as ego identity, is an individual's complete sense of who they are, including their traits, capabilities, interests, values, and social roles. The building of identity is a lifelong process, but it takes on critical importance in adolescence because of both the sheer number of changes experienced and the sense that life is reaching a point at which our decisions and choices could have lifelong consequences. Brange et al., 2021, Crane, 1992. Forming a coherent identity takes time, and adolescence accommodates this key developmental task. Erik Erikson's contribution to identity is sometimes thought to be one of his greatest insights, perhaps in part due to his own experience as an immigrant with a varied cultural heritage. Erikson moved across multiple countries in his youth, experienced multiple name changes, identified as multiracial, and studied identity in multiple cultural and historic contexts. Miller, 2011. Erikson's fifth psychosocial stage, identity versus role confusion, involves forming a stable and whole identity by first exploring various roles and identities. This stage typically occurs from ages 12 to 18 years, and is distinctive as a stage when individuals try out a variety of roles and personas in a journey to discover their individual identity. Developing an identity leads to strength and stability of identity. Failing to develop an identity results in role confusion, sometimes called diffusion, which leads to feeling fragmented or lost. Orenstein and Lewis, 2022. A strong sense of identity helps teenagers reject negative self-evaluations that don't match their inner and outer experiences, reducing anxiety. As they explore their identity, adolescents consider their past experiences, societal expectations, and personal aspirations to establish their values and discover who they are. A recent study looked at identity development and depressive symptoms in Belgian adolescents between the ages of 12 to 25 years. They found young people generally develop a stronger sense of identity and experience less role confusion, though this can vary at different stages. A strong sense of identity is linked to fewer depressive symptoms, while role confusion is linked to more depressive symptoms throughout adolescence. Bogarts et al., 2021. It depends. Should we take the teen movie genre seriously? Film critics and social commentators may dismiss the latest movies about teenage experiences and the coming-of-age process, but they often become huge popular successes, and for good reason. Not only are they highly entertaining, filled with young stars and amusing plots, but they are tailor-made for a teenage audience that likes to see their own experiences represented, and perhaps to see whether the adult filmmakers truly understand them. Some popular examples of the teenage movie genre include Perks of Being a Wallflower, 2012, Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017, Spider-Man: Into the Spider-Verse, 2018, The Breakfast Club, 1985, 8th Grade, 2018, Mean Girls, 2004, 2023, Juno, 2007, and To All the Boys I've Loved Before, 2018. Almost without exception, these films take place in and around a U.S. high school, and they frequently introduce the audience to various cliques and larger social groups within the school's social ecosystem. For example, in The Breakfast Club, a student lists cliques like brains and jocks. Mean Girls starts with a character pointing out different social groups. Each clique and crowd offers teenagers a way to select and try on parts of their possible identity, while some crowds are socially selected for them. 8th grade shows the life of a middle school high school student, Kayla, Elsie Fisher, navigating anxiety-inducing social situations, social media overload, typical parent-child communication struggles, questions about sexuality, and her personal and public identity. These films highlight a central adolescent experience, exploring and achieving a complete sense of self. They reflect adolescence experiences, sometimes playfully naming groups, and often depicting characters moving through identities and roles to complete a quest. Adults are sometimes peripheral or absent. Other adolescent themes frequently depicted in movies include inspiration, social comparison, coping, identification and idealization, and strong social relationships that bring joy, gratitude, and loss. Greenwood and Long, 2015. These themes speak to the youth culture that thrives in high schools, where the most important focus seems to be on social status and peer relations. All else pales in importance, even the whole point of school, academics. While socio-cultural context and individual personality traits govern the way teens interpret these films and behave in school and out, by responding to these movies with enthusiasm, adolescent audiences tell us they are valid perspectives on their real-life experience. Recall that in Erikson's theory, development is motivated and fueled by psychosocial crises or challenges. The relatively rapid changes in the physical bodies of adolescents guarantee that others in the social environment will begin reacting differently when around them. For example, the deep voice, tall stature, and facial hair of a 15-year-old male might lead others to expectations of mature thinking and behavior, even as he still struggles with some immature thought processes and lack of adult levels of brain development and self-regulation. Interactions between the developing individual and those in their social environment propel developmental progress. The adolescent is motivated to make sense of their changing place in the world and thus begin the process of identity exploration. Identity statuses. James Marcia built on Erikson's work by focusing on how best to describe the developing adolescent's identity status at any point in time. Marcia, 1966-1980. Marcia emphasized two key questions in determining the identity status of an individual. Is there evidence of identity exploration? And is the individual currently committed to an identity? The answers, yes or no, establish the adolescent as being in identity achievement, moratorium, foreclosure, or identity diffusion, figure 10.4. Those who reach identity achievement often arrive after much exploration, while those in moratorium are still exploring different roles without making firm decisions. Kroger et al. 2010. These statuses also take into account various aspects of an individual's identity, including their occupation, sexuality, beliefs, and values. Often, adolescents move through these identity statuses before settling on successful identity achievement. In identity moratorium, individuals are actively exploring various identities but not declaring an identity to be fully formed, instead experiencing an identity crisis. Mias, 2023, noted that adolescents spend much of their time in identity moratorium, where identity is a work in progress. Although the term makes this sound negative, the moratorium provides the psychological space and motivation to explore a newfound ability to imagine possible selves, various identities they may work toward in the future, motivates adolescents to start on the path toward achieving an identity. For example, people often describe college as a great period of moratorium, wherein you explore various academic interests and potential paths while meeting a wider range of people. In identity diffusion, which most closely aligns with Erikson's role confusion, individuals have low commitment and often feel lost. They do not actively seek an identity. Marcia, 1980, described them as lacking a clear sense of where they will fit into society as an adult and at risk of role confusion. This might be an acceptable identity status in early adolescence, but society's expectation is that all individuals will use these years to explore and pursue interests, abilities, and roles. By exploring roles and interests, adolescents move toward identity achievement, the realization and commitment to a coherent understanding of themselves and their relationship with society. This is the pivotal psychosocial achievement of adolescence, and it provides adolescents with an initial sense of direction, purpose, and a starting point in the world at large as they enter adulthood. In Marcia's concept of identity foreclosure, the developing teen shows an early commitment to an identity, claiming they know who they are and what they stand for, even if there is no evidence they did any exploratory work to reach that conclusion. For example, teens in early and even mid-adolescence will sometimes state their political values, such as by taking a particular stance on climate or immigration or foreign policy, but these values typically match those of their parents, and the adolescent cannot elaborate on any specifics. Identity foreclosure may serve a developmental purpose by giving the young adolescent a starting point for later exploration. After all, the world is complex, and having an initial set of answers to help make sense of it can be comforting. The key is for the adolescent to eventually begin actively exploring their values and interests, with the goal of backing their own belief system with experience and/or thoughtful consideration. While an adolescent might align with their parents on a value or identity, such as sharing the same religious identity, an adolescent who has identity achievement will be able to fully explain how they arrived at that identity on their own. While identity achievement often occurs during adolescence or early adulthood, it is not uncommon for it to take many years beyond adolescence for individuals to fully settle into identity achievement. After all, in the decades beyond adolescence, we are often learning and growing across several aspects of our identity, potentially shifting in our occupations, family and friendship roles, and moral beliefs or personal values. Achieving identity in adolescence represents a pivotal step in identity, rather than a permanent, unchangeable status. The alarm sounds early on 15-year-old Kenji's school days. After dressing and eating breakfast, he practices 20 minutes of meditation each morning. Meditation helps clear his mind and focus his energy and emotions. Today, he is especially stressed because he has exams in 2 classes and a paper due in another. As he enters school, Kenji joins friends, exchanging fist bumps. During lunch, 2 of his table mates start teasing the girl sitting alone at the end of the table. Kenji weighs saying something to them or moving to a different table to avoid trouble. He decides to move. The end of the school day brings a sense of relief, although several hours of homework await. Once home, he grabs a few rice balls and a piece of candy for a snack, and retreats to his room to scroll through social media for a bit on his phone. Kenji's day is not only busy, but full of different motivational states, opportunities for self-regulation, and emotions. Emotions are the result of a complex set of cognitive, physiological, behavioral, and environmental components and interactions. Ekman et al., 1972, Scherer, 1997. They often motivate behavior, so it's not surprising that they play a prominent role in adolescent experience. They are important as teens develop an understanding of themselves, including their developing emotional intelligence, self-concept, and self-esteem, and their increased ability to self-regulate. Emotional intelligence. For many, adolescence is a time when the social world expands significantly. Not only do teens spend more time outside the home, both in school and at after-school activities, but their new reasoning capabilities, fueled by physical brain developments, make interacting with peers and non-family adults a central means of development. They learn to recognize and understand their own emotions, including their triggers, strengths, and weaknesses, and they begin achieving self-awareness. They learn to control impulses, manage stress, and adapt to changing circumstances, with the developing skill of self-regulation. They are on their way to achieving emotional intelligence, EI, the ability to recognize their own and others' emotional states and feelings, to regulate emotions, and to remain motivated. Goldman, 1998. Emotionally intelligent individuals can also express their emotions, convey empathy, and maintain their psychological, social, and emotional well-being. Alina et al., 2021. Through social interactions, adolescents learn to express their emotions in appropriate verbal and nonverbal ways. These communication skills in turn help them grow increasingly adept at resolving conflicts and establishing healthy boundaries in their relationships. And emotional intelligence allows adolescents to use emotions as valuable information for problem solving with rationality and flexibility. Parents can also help foster emotional intelligence. In particular, the authoritative parenting style has shown a positive relationship with the development of emotional intelligence, while the authoritarian style has been linked with lower emotional intelligence in adolescence. Nastas and Sala, 2012. Nguyen et al., 2020. Recall that authoritative parents are sensitive to their child's daily needs and emotional states, actively encourage them to express themselves, and help them work through emotional, motivational, and social challenges. These behaviors model the use of emotional intelligence. Reyes-Wapano, 2021. Emotional intelligence also has long-lasting benefits. Adolescents with high I have stronger academic performance, are less likely to experience school burnout, have a deeper sense of life satisfaction overall, and tend to view themselves as having the coping skills and capabilities needed to overcome adversity. Collado Soler et al., 2023. Next, we'll look at self-regulation more specifically. Self-regulation. The major developments in the frontal lobe and limbic system during adolescence support the growing ability to exert self-regulation, the ability to manage and control behavior and emotions without outside assistance. Muravin and Baumeister, 2000. McClelland et al., 2017. This skill allows us to change or inhibit certain thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to achieve better outcomes. Baumeister and Alquist, 2009. Moilanen et al., 2015. Related abilities include task persistence, delayed gratification, self-monitoring, self-reward for progress, management of frustration and distress, and the capacity to seek help when needed. Murray and Rosenbaum, 2017. Figure 10.5. Self-regulation increases steadily across adolescence, shaped in part by parental and peer influences. Farley and Kimspoon, 2014. Caregivers regulate a child's behavior and provide an initial set of expectations and guidance. As an adolescent develops and exhibits self-control, caregivers can reduce the amount of explicit regulation support they provide. A good quality parent-adolescent relationship predicts good self-regulatory skills in the developing teen. However, this influence can work both ways, and a teen having difficulty regulating their emotions or behaviors will likely contribute to a difficult parent-teen relationship. Caregivers can model many of the same emotion regulation and self-regulation techniques you've learned about to help adolescents improve their own regulation skills. However, they can also begin to reduce their support while offering helpful reminders of emotion regulation tools when frustration levels seem too high. Murray and Rosenbaum, 2017. For example, if a teen seems frustrated with a challenging homework assignment and is about to give up, a caregiver might remind them of the value of taking a short break, eating a snack, and then breaking the homework down into smaller steps. Positive peer relationships are also an important predictor for, and outcome of, good self-regulation skills, including emotional self-regulation. This influence also goes both ways. Teens who exhibit strong self-regulation skills have been found to form caring, close friendships with peers. In turn, these close peer relations can help to support and reinforce self-regulation. Schulte and Van Aken, 2006. Meldrum and Hay, 2012. Self-concept and self-esteem. Our self-concept is the mental image or representation we have of ourselves, the cognitive portion of identity. During adolescence, it goes beyond the tangible descriptions of middle childhood, like dog lover or middle child, to encompass abstract qualities like fair and loyal. Teens develop their self-concept by comparing their qualities with others' characteristics and abilities. Harder, 2006. For example, a 15-year-old might pride herself on being trustworthy and hardworking. She judges herself to be as trustworthy as her best friend. She believes she works far harder than most peers in her classes. The dimensions of the self-concept, as outlined by Harder, 1983, are scholastic competence, social acceptance, athletic competence, physical appearance, behavioral conduct, and self-acceptance. By the end of adolescence, they have been built into a coherent whole that informs an overall identity. Longitudinal research on children suggests self-concept is relatively stable from middle childhood to middle adolescence. Kuzuku et al., 2014, which may be a result of peer perception and niche picking. For example, once a 10-year-old demonstrates athletic prowess, peers will likely continue to react to this by encouraging the child to join their team during athletic games, reinforcing this part of the self-concept, peer perception. Likewise, someone who discovers they are good at a skill or activity will likely seek situations that support it, niche picking. Encouraging adolescents to try out new opportunities can help them to discover new interests, skills, and parts of their self-concept. If self-concept is the cognitive understanding of ourself, self-esteem is the motivational and emotional piece. Harder and Whitesell, 2003. Numerous studies have found a link between low self-esteem and risks of developing depression. Masalink et al., 2018. Nealis and Bukowski, 2019. Adolescents with low self-esteem have been found to have a smaller group of friends who can offer social support and to show social adjustment problems. Marshall et al., 2014. Overall, however, self-esteem rises over the course of adolescence. and the factors most likely to predict positive self-esteem at a later age include positive parental relationships, healthy physical activity, and positive body image. Birkeland et al. 2012. No clear sex differences in average levels of self-esteem have been reported. Masselink et al. 2017. Healthy self-esteem and a sense of mastery can be enhanced by practicing strategies like mindfulness and self-compassion. Marshall et al. 2015. Positive reinforcement, supportive feedback, and encouragement of self-discovery and physical activity can also help. Body image. Physical appearance is one of the main dimensions of self-concept. Our mental image or representation of our body is our body image and is closely related to self-esteem. Given the rapid physical development of adolescence and the social environment's ever-changing response to these developments, body image becomes a major psychological feature of the adolescent experience. Figure 10.6. If someone's body image is healthy, their mental representation of their body size and shape is healthy and positive. An unhealthy body image is just the opposite. The person's view of their body does not match objective reality and contains negative self-evaluations. Engel, 2017, Volker et al., 2015. All adolescents are susceptible to the development of an unhealthy body image. The timing of puberty is particularly influential to this, because cultural ideals for physical beauty can heighten a teen's sense of being on time or off track for physical development, relative to peers and cultural expectations. For early maturing adolescent females in the United States, for example, breast and hip development may differ from beauty standards of a thin or athletic body shape. Lee and Stein, 2013, Ullman et al., 2018. For both adolescent males and females, early maturation is linked to a variety of negative psychological, social, and health outcomes. Hoyt et al., 2020. This includes being more likely to engage in risky health behaviors like experimenting with drugs and higher risks of depressive symptoms both in adolescence and in young adulthood. Research on teen body image highlights the interplay among media exposure, cultural values, and individual factors shaping body image perceptions in different racial and ethnic groups. For instance, among Latina girls living in the United States, frequent viewing of mainstream television is linked to decreased body satisfaction, while viewing of Black-oriented television improves body satisfaction for Latina girls who have adopted more U.S. cultural beliefs. Schooler, 2008. Black adolescent girls' exposure to stereotypical media images of Black women predicted more negative interpretations and impacts of these images, particularly when racial identity was low. Jean et al., 2022. This may indicate that having a strong racial identity may protect some adolescents from the harmful influences of negative media images on body image. Asian American girls' body image perceptions are influenced by both mainstream white culture and Asian culture, which can lead to disordered eating and a lower likelihood of receiving treatment for eating disorders. Javier et al., 2019. In a study of Chinese teenagers, girls were generally more unhappy with their gender and physical appearance, while boys were more unhappy with their sexual organs. Zhang et al., 2020. Overall, many contextual influences and individual differences interact to shape an adolescent's body image. Information that contributes to adolescents' body image comes from peers, family members, television and movies, advertisements, and social media. The Surgeon General of the United States recently published an advisory for parents, educators, and practitioners warning of the dangers of social media use by adolescents. Office of the U.S. Surgeon General, 2023. It notes a particular concern for adolescent girls, citing an increase in the risk for developing a negative body image and eating disorders. Holland and Tigeman, 2016. Parents' words, attitudes, and behaviors related to health, diet, exercise, and physical development contribute to teens' sense of their physical selves, and mothers play a significant role in their teenage daughters' views. Helfert and Warschberger, 2011, Newmark Steiner, et al., 2010. Peers provide feedback about which body types are valued and how someone is doing relative to those standards. Life hacks. Promoting a healthy body image. What can we do to encourage a healthy body image in adolescence? Caregivers can start with developing their own healthy body image so they can better model healthy behaviors, emotions, and thoughts for their children. Jensen et al., 2018. Similarly, adults can embrace and encourage body diversity, the idea that our physical diversity is good and that people all have different strengths. Further, teaching children about media literacy and critically analyzing media messages builds a good set of lifelong skills, helping children counteract negative information about beauty ideals as represented in the media. Finally, one counterintuitive but important recommendation is to avoid saying positive things about someone based solely on notions of physical beauty. By praising someone for their physicality alone, adults are inadvertently signaling that this matters above other characteristics, like personality, intelligence, or talents. Instead, praise desirable characteristics and effort. Here are some other tips for promoting healthy body image. Avoid making comments about your weight or the weight of others, especially around children and teens. Newmark Steiner et al., 2010. In addition, avoid making negative comments about your own body. Promote media literacy by talking about media representations that may model an unhealthy body image. If a character in a show says negative things about their own body or another person's body, caregivers can use that as an opportunity to talk about how to interpret media messages. Engage in healthy behaviors at home to maintain a healthy body, including a good diet and exercise habits. Be careful though. It's better to frame your workout and nutrition choices as being to stay strong or stay healthy, rather than talk about specific beauty or weight goals. If you catch yourself saying something negative about your body, other bodies, or promoting an unhealthy diet, make it right. You can point out that you made a mistake, apologize, and note that you should do better with being body positive for your own well-being and the well-being of others. 16-year-old Taylor looked forward to finally being a junior at their high school. The course choices open to upper-class students were more interesting and offered the opportunity to engage more closely with peers who shared similar interests. Taylor generally got along with the various cliques at school, and their closest friends were connections developed over the past few years. This included soccer teammates, lunch buddies, one of whom Taylor had a crush on, some gaming friends, and fellow Hmong students involved in the Hmong Student Club. Taylor's experiences with these various relationships and contexts serve an important role in establishing their identity at this stage of life. Many social interactions are informed by our own and others' expectations based on perceived racial and ethnic identity, gender identity, and sexual orientation and identity. Thus, a key part of healthy adolescence is searching for our own identity by exploring these areas. Racial and ethnic identity development in adolescence. Our cultural heritage consists of adaptations to the natural and social world that have shared meaning and are passed from generation to generation. Cohen, 2009. Our ethnicity derives from our cultural heritage. Race, in contrast, is a socially created construct that often incorporates elements of cultural heritage. Revisit 1.4 Contexts and Settings of Development to review the overlaps and distinctions between race, ethnicity, and culture. Learning about and incorporating our cultural heritage into our sense of self is part of the multifaceted achievement of identity. The demographics of any country's population are always changing. In the United States, the 2020 census revealed that the overall size of many ethno-racial minority groups is increasing, especially among youth. Figure 10.7. According to the census, only 53% of those under age 18 years were reported as white alone as their race, compared with 64.1% of adults. Black or African American children make up 13.9% of the U.S. population, Asian American children 5.5%, and American Indian and Alaska Native children 1.4%, and fully 15.1% of all children identified as being of two or more races. More than 1/4 of all children report having Hispanic or Latino heritage, compared with 16.8% of the adult population. U.S. Census Bureau, 2020. These figures point out the value of specific developmental theories and trajectories for adolescents from non-white backgrounds. They also show the irony of using the term minority to describe the ethno-racial composition of the United States. Of course, the term minority refers to more than just population counts. That is, when people talk about minority or majority groups in psychology, they refer to both the numbers and the opportunities each group has. Similarly, when discussing equity, diversity, and inclusion, EDI, it usually means efforts to ensure all groups have equal chances and access, no matter whether they are a majority or minority group status. For example, research on African American, Asian American, and Latinx adolescents shows that these students experience more regular ethnic/racial discrimination, such as in school, which results in more negative mood and poorer mental health. Del Toro et al., 2024. Point 2. These experiences are often due to systemic issues like racial bias, and may lead to fewer opportunities in adulthood, including lower wages and fewer promotion opportunities. However, this research study also showed how resilience was quite likely when adolescents received more culturally inclusive socialization, Del Toro et al., 2024. Research shows that the development of a positive ethnic or racial identity in teens leads to higher self-esteem, better mental health, and greater resilience against discrimination. Rivas-Drake et al., 2014. This positive identity fosters a sense of belonging and empowerment. The benefits of positive ethnic or racial identity development. The term ethno-racial highlights the unique racial experiences of individuals within an ethnicity. Black, white, Asian, and indigenous Latinas each have distinct racial experiences, as do all individuals within each of these groups. Sandoval, 2023. Jimenez et al., 2015. In other words, ethno-racial groups have differences, both between groups and within individuals, who may share the same ethno-racial identity. For a growing proportion of the adolescent population, developing a positive ethnic and/or racial identity is a critical part of healthy development. Rivas-Drake et al., 2014. A positive ethno-racial identity is one in which the adolescent acknowledges and feels connected with their community, incorporates their social group into their self-concept, and views that part of themselves with healthy esteem. This result is associated with numerous healthy outcomes and has been shown to serve as a safeguard against discrimination. Gallagher et al., 2011. Umanya Taylor and Rivas-Drake, 2021. For example, Umanya Taylor and colleagues, 2018, conducted a study on a high school intervention called the Identity Project, aimed at developing ethno-racial identity in youth of color. The 8-session program, which addressed identity, stereotypes, racism, and heritage, led to increased ethno-racial identity exploration and better psychological outcomes, including improved coping skills against discrimination. White adolescents may also benefit from developing a healthy ethno-racial identity even when they may be growing up in a white majority culture. Satterthwaite Fryman and Umana Taylor, 2023. While white is a racial term, white identities may involve overlapping aspects of cultural and/or national heritage, ethnicity, and race. Research indicates that white American adolescents may choose between a few facets of ethno-racial identity, including an American identity, a sense of connection to their European ancestry, e.g., Irish, German, or Polish ancestry, a connection to an ethnic community, e.g., a local Greek community in an American city, or a blended identity. Koutrelakos, 2013, Satterthwaite Fryman, and Umana Taylor, 2023. A comprehensive review of positive ethno-racial identity found that for African American youth, a positive ethnic identity leads to higher self-esteem, a more positive self-concept, higher academic achievement and engagement, decreased depressive and somatic symptoms, bodily manifestations of psychological distress, better coping and mastery, and decreased perceived stress, especially about discrimination. Rivas-Drake et al., 2014. For Latino youth, affirmation of their Latino, such youth also exhibited fewer internalizing symptoms, like depression and anxiety, and less externalizing behavior, such as acting out in a problematic way. There were also positive influences on academic engagement, self-efficacy, and school performance. Adolescent development of Black identity. Psychology researcher William Cross described an entire developmental pathway for the way Black youth achieve an identity. Cross, 1991, 1995, 2022. 4. Burrell-Craft, 2020. His theory posits a series of stages encountered in sequence, though movement back and forth between the stages is possible. Prior to adolescence, children are in the pre-encounter phase of racial identity formation. They internalize messages from the dominant majority culture that emphasize the majority as being positive and that view the minority culture negatively. As a result of exposure to the dominant cultural view, Black children and adolescents may distance themselves from Black culture. Gardner Kitt and Worrell, 2007. Adolescence marks the typical beginning of the encounter phase. This encounter is often a negative trigger, such as the experience of outright discrimination in the social environment adolescents are now more broadly exposed to. They begin trying to reconcile their ethno-racial identity with what they thought they knew or understood about the dominant cultural group. Often this means turning toward their ethno-racial group and seeking to learn more about this part of themselves. This stage is called immersion/immersion. Black youth in this stage will begin to incorporate visible parts of their heritage into their everyday lives and find support from other Black community members. The immersion/immersion stage can be seen as a kind of fortifying step in which cultural armor is added. Eventually, developing youth will internalize the more visible and concrete symbols of their heritage, incorporating its ideas and concepts into their own self-view. It is during this internalization stage that Black youth feel more comfortable connecting with allies from the dominant culture, and they may then seek positive action and justice in their lives, effectively using their strong ethno-racial identity to make a difference. For example, a Black teenager might join a school club that focuses on social justice, working alongside peers of different backgrounds to promote equality and awareness in their community. Adolescent development of Latino and Hispanic identity. The Latino community is a heterogeneous group with between and within family differences by country of birth, heritage, and racial, indigenous, immigration, and documentation background. Pew Research Center 2022.5. Many Latino youths in the United States are raised in Spanish-speaking households with varying levels of social interactions with other communities and multiple connections with both Latino and non-Latino youths. Patton 2016, U.S. Census Bureau. A leading theory of identity formation for Latino youth proposes not a sequence of stages, but rather a set of orientations or lenses. Pabon-Gauthier 2016, 6 Ferdman and Gallegos 2017, that describe various degrees of identification. For example, some Latino youth raised in predominantly white areas have only weak identification with their Latino heritage or background. Torres 2003, 8. Latinos with darker skin tones are much less likely to identify as white and more likely to identify with non-white labels like Afro-Latinx. Flores 2023.9. Others are undifferentiated, accepting the dominant culture and adopting colorblindness as a stance. That is, they focus on the similarities among ethno-racial groups and claim not to recognize either positive or negative qualities based on ethnicity or race. Ferdman and Gallegos, 2001. A Pew Research Center survey by Gonzalez Barrera 201910 found that light-skinned Hispanic people had similar experiences with discrimination as non-Hispanic white people. Around 25% of both groups reported feeling that others were suspicious of them, and about 20% said they faced unfair treatment in pay or hiring. About half the Hispanic respondents identified as white, with 68% of those with the lightest skin tones doing so. While skin tone affected the way Hispanic people were treated, for Black people, discrimination was more influenced by factors like gender and education level. Other lenses include Latino as other, meaning the individual views themselves generically as Latino with no specific country or cultural connection, and subgroup identified, whose members accept a regional subgroup identification, Central American, for example. Ferdman and Gallegos, 2001. Finally, those who fully acknowledge and accept their specific Latino heritage, Latino identified, and those who take a more change-oriented Latino integrated view show full achievement of a Latino identity and an understanding of the racial structure of society and of ways to push back and challenge these structures. Ferdman and Gallegos, 2001. You might notice similarity between these lenses and crosses Black identity development model. For example, a teenager who identifies as Afro-Latino might embrace both their African and Latino heritage, actively participating in cultural events from both backgrounds and challenging stereotypes. Latino identity is multifaceted and influenced by a combination of cultural, racial, and societal factors, emphasizing the importance of understanding and respecting this diversity within the community. Adolescent development of Asian American and Pacific Islander identity. The 2020 U.S. Census counted 20.6 million individuals who identified as having Asian, Native Hawaiian, or Pacific Islander heritage, representing 6.2% of the overall U.S. population. U.S. Census Bureau, 2020. Statistics Canada reports over 7 million Asian Canadians, or 19.3% of Canada's population. Statistics Canada, 2024. Psychiatrist Jean Kim, 1981-2001, Choi, 2021, Wu et al., 2020, identified a model that envisions the process of Asian American ethnic identity formation along a continuum, from early childhood through adolescence and into adulthood. Individuals begin by becoming aware of an Asian American ethnicity, and much of the process takes place via interactions with parents and community members. Children are sensitive to both positive and negative messages, conveyed both outright and informally in these interactions. According to Kim, 1981-2001, as they begin formal schooling, Asian American children tend to enter a white identification stage. They encounter attitudes toward Asian Americans, including prejudices, through interactions with peers in the school environment. Ethnic and racial discrimination and social ranking greatly shape the way minority youth experience being part of a minority. As a result, they frequently choose to temporarily minimize their ethnic heritage and identify with the dominant white culture. You've learned about the increased cognitive skill set that comes with the development of formal operations in children, and the increased opportunities for social interaction afforded by an adolescent's rich and complex social environment. Together, these tend to lead to an awakening to social and political consciousness for Asian American youth. The trigger is often the awareness of long-standing prejudices and oppression of minority groups, including their own. This is consistent with what researchers have seen with other ethnic identity models. The impetus to develop an ethnic identity often arises from a negative encounter with the dominant ethnic group. Cross et al., 2022, Sellers et al., 2006. The result, according to Kim, 1981-2001, is a decreased desire to identify with the white majority group, and a redirection stage wherein Asian American adolescents search for knowledge about their ethnic heritage. There is often a sense of anger about the dominant white culture during this search. Finally, adolescents arrive at an incorporation stage. Adoption of a positive view of themselves as Asian American and a level of comfort with this aspect of their identity. Notably, anger, distancing from, and even longing to identify with white dominant culture have faded as the teen or young adult embraces their Asian American identity. American Indian and Alaska Native, AIAN, Identity Development in Youth. U.S. Census Bureau statistics reveal that from 2017 to 2021, 2.7 million U.S. residents identified solely as American Indian and Alaska Native, AIAN, while 6.3 million identified as AIAN alone or in combination with other races. Among those aged 5 years and older, 32.1% spoke a non-English language at home, and 58.9% of those aged 16 years and over were part of the labor force. U.S. Census Bureau 2023.11. Walters 199912 suggested a model for urban American Indian cultural identity development, where individuals move from internalizing negative stereotypes to feeling marginalized between two cultures, to rejecting colonization's negative impacts, and finally to having a strong and resilient American Indian identity. A study with urban American Indian adults showed they often started by rejecting their native identity and ended up embracing it healthily. Lucero 2010.13, Cooley's and colleagues 201314 found that urban American Indian youth who felt strongly connected to their indigenous background participated more in traditional cultural practices. In another study, House and colleagues 200615 found that urban American Indian children and adults talked about urban-rural tension, cultural pride, and intergenerational trauma from relocation, which influenced their identity. Thus, American Indian youth often move from internalizing negative stereotypes to embracing a resilient cultural identity, with connections to traditional practices and awareness of intergenerational trauma influencing their identity development. The lack of Native American representation in modern media affects this group's identity and self-understanding. When represented, Native Americans are often portrayed as outdated figures or negative stereotypes, limiting the perception of what they can achieve in today's society. Levitt et al. 201516 noted that the lack of representation in the media harms Native American youth's self-understanding by making their identities all seem the same, creating limited and narrow identity examples, and leading to loss of individuality and self-stereotyping among Native American teenagers today. Further, policymakers and educators should support schools in avoiding harmful and negative representations, like mascots, that stereotype and potentially harm Native American students. Biracial or multiracial ethnic identity. A growing number of individuals are members of two or more ethnic groups. Carlos Poston 199017 put forth a model of biracial ethnic development that shows the complex and active search for information about their ethnic heritage that biracial adolescents may undergo. In Poston's model, biracial ethnic identity formation begins with the individual's feeling a need to choose one ethnic group over the other. For example, an Afro-Caribbean teen whose family has immigrated from Jamaica to the United States may feel the need to first identify with her Black ethno-racial identity and de-emphasize her Caribbean heritage. Alternatively, they may feel the need to first identify with their Caribbean heritage, while de-emphasizing their Black ethno-racial identity. Choosing one ethnicity over the other may simplify the cultural learning that forms the basis of identity formation. Later, as the model points out, the teen may experience a sense of guilt for exclusively embracing just one aspect of their ethno-racial heritage, often leading to re-examination and further exploration of the other. The end of the process of biracial identity formation often brings a growing appreciation of the benefits of adopting multiple ethnic identities, including a sense of belonging and connection with the person's heritage. Poston, 1990. Identity formation is complete when the adolescent works to integrate both or more sets of cultural knowledge and identities into a coherent whole. One potential benefit of being bi- or multiracial is code switching, the ability to change our perspective and behavior to match the demands of our current cultural environment. Code switching can include changing hairstyle, speech, or name, or downplaying cultural identity to avoid negative stereotypes. Hutton, 2022. For example, someone might switch between formal and casual language depending on who they're with. But code switching can be exhausting, Johnson et al. 2021, and make someone feel they must change who they are to be accepted. Creating inclusive environments that embrace diversity and encourage alliance can help minimize the need code switch to succeed in the larger culture, especially their workplaces. Gender identity in adolescence. Gender is a major component of self-concept and a major part of our overall identity. Recall that sex is assigned based on features of biological anatomy and physiology, and it can be male, female, or intersex. While gender consists of society's ideas about the roles, attitudes, and behaviors associated with each sex assignment. Gender identity is our own psychological sense and acceptance of our particular gender. The way we label our gender identity is also related to whether it conforms to society's expectations based on sex assignment, denoted as cis if it conforms to those expectations, or trans if it is non-conforming. Ideas about sex and gender constitute some of the earliest social influences on our development, and individuals enter adolescence with an abundance of information about gender and gender norms. For many, gender identity follows from a sense of congruence among their physical sexual characteristics, their assigned gender at birth based on those sexual characteristics, and a childhood of socially reinforced gender-conforming behaviors. Diamond and Butterworth, 2008, Steensma et al., 2013. The Gender Intensification Hypothesis, Hill and Lynch, 1983, posits that pressures to conform to gender roles intensify during adolescence, leading to increased self-consciousness and lower self-esteem in girls than in boys. In many European societies, boys are encouraged to demonstrate autonomy, self-assertion, and dominance, while girls are typically taught to prioritize kindness, caring, compassion, and a focus on others. Kohlmeyer et al., 2018. This study found that fathers' gender role identities influenced these dynamics. Traditional fathers discouraged autonomy in daughters, while egalitarian fathers encouraged it. Fathers of sons were less likely to closely monitor their sons, thereby allowing for more autonomy. Researchers have also investigated the way gender roles develop in families in childhood through adolescence. Shanahan et al., 2007, Crowder et al., 2007. They found that the chores performed by boys and girls became more gender-specific over time, especially in families that adhered to traditional gender roles. In childhood and adolescence, youth also spent more time with the same gender parent, particularly if they had different gender siblings. Girls reported feeling more warmth from their mothers and less from their fathers than their brothers reported. Attitudes toward gender roles changed differently for boys and girls as they grew older, influenced by family context and individual characteristics. Girls became less traditional, while boys initially became less traditional, but then became more traditional later. Another study explored whether adolescents became more gender stereotypical and whether doing so predicted depression. Preece et al., 2009. Girls reported higher stereotypical femininity than boys, but no increase in stereotypical gender traits was found over time. Higher stereotypical masculinity in both girls and boys predicted fewer depressive symptoms, especially under moderate stress. Preece et al., 2009. These changes mostly happened during the transition to adolescence. A recent study used the gender identity theory to explore cultural interest differences between different gendered adolescents. A sample of Flemish adolescents found that identifying strongly with traditional gender roles and feeling pressure to conform led girls to have more interest in arts and literature, while boys had much less interest. Lagarde et al., 2017. Gender identity and social pressures may reinforce gender-specific cultural preferences. A feeling of mismatch or discontent with their socially assigned gender serves as the impetus for some adolescents to begin exploration of gender identity. Steensma et al., 2013. This discontent is likely amplified by the dramatic hormonal and bodily changes that occur during puberty for all adolescents. The developing adolescents' new reasoning skills also strengthen their ability to question the status quo and imagine what is possible. The increased number of social interactions, especially with peers, also gives the developing individual many opportunities for social comparison, modeling, and feedback. Behavior does not match society's expectations for our assigned gender, is gender nonconforming behavior. For instance, a boy wearing a skirt, makeup, and nail polish may be considered gender nonconforming in a culture or community where skirts, makeup, and nail polish are associated with femininity. Some adolescents explore their gender by trying out new roles and personal styles, much as they undergo a process of exploration and commitment in their overall identity. However, there are many other ways adolescents may explore and commit to a gender identity, including seeking support from healthcare providers. Gender nonconforming youth may also benefit from support from healthcare professionals, particularly as they are at a higher risk of peer victimization. One study of Thai students found that female adolescents and gender nonconforming female adolescents were at a higher risk of social and sexual victimization, which in turn increased risks of depression. Chung et al., 2020. The formation of gender identity is an important process for transgender and gender nonconforming youth. This process often begins with a sense of incongruence between the gender identity an individual was assigned at birth and their experienced sense of gender identity in early and/or middle childhood. Zelizniak et al., 2021. O et al., 2024. Adolescence and early adulthood represent a pivotal time in gender identity formation, often culminating in a variety of different gender-affirming choices in establishing identity. O et al., 2024. These choices vary but may include a combination of socio-emotional, legal, medical, surgical, and non-surgical pathways to establishing an identity that will promote well-being and long-term mental health. O et al., 2024. Katzweiss et al., 2017. Early support for and knowledge of gender identity development, including gender-affirming care, lead to improved quality of life and the healthy development of gender identity as adolescents mature. O et al., 2024. Katzweiss et al., 2017. About 25% of the world's languages assign each noun a gender, masculine, feminine, or neuter. However, some cultures go beyond the binary view and acknowledge, for example, the hijra in India, two-spirit in some Native American tribes, and men-women in Balkan communities. Turbin et al., 2018. Cultural changes in the United States have yielded greater awareness of gender possibilities and brought youth a bit more freedom to explore and choose among man, woman, non-binary, cisgender, transgender, gender fluid, and agender. Sexual orientation in adolescence. Another important aspect of identity development in adolescence is sexual orientation. The sex of those to whom we are sexually, emotionally, and/or romantically attracted. American Psychological Association, 2012. Worthington et al., 2002. Heterosexual identity development. The term heteronormativity refers to the idea that heterosexuality is the norm or preferred sexual orientation, and that opposite-sex people of different sexes or genders are best suited for sexual and marital relationships. Most sexual identities are heterosexual or straight in orientation. Because it is the norm, people with this identity are not often as conscious of it, and it fades into their psychological and sociological background. In fact, only recently has psychology begun outlining the developmental process by which someone develops a specifically heterosexual identity. Hoffman, 2004, Ybarra et al., 2016. Consistent with the biopsychosocial approach, for example, Worthington and colleagues, 2002, proposed a model that sees heterosexual identity development as influenced by biology, culture, religion, gender norms, and social attitudes. As adolescents explore their sexuality, these factors help them form a clear sexual identity in which their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors align. The model highlights the value of recognizing and accepting our sexual needs and preferences. Sexual minority identity development. Roughly 7.1% of individuals in the United States identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. LGBTQ+. Jones, 2022. In 2015, when the National Youth Risk Behavior Survey, YRBS, first incorporated questions about sexual identity and behavior, Kahn et al., 2016, documented that 6.0% of U.S. high school students identified as bisexual, 2.0% identified as gay or lesbian, and 3.2% were unsure of their sexual identity. The development of one's sexual identity has long been considered a central task of adolescence. Erickson, 1968. But much more is known about the sexual identity development of members of sexual minority groups, those who eventually come to identify themselves as lesbian, gay, bisexual, or another sexual identity, LGBTQ+. Research on LGBTQ+ individuals began from the perspective that their sexuality was a mental illness, Hall et al., 2021. But over the last few decades, psychology has seen it instead as part of a continuum of normative human experience. Early research on adolescents who identify as gay and lesbian sought to outline a sequence of typical stages on the way to forming and accepting a sexual identity. Cass, 1996, Aglape, 2014. In this view, revealing a gender identity or sexual status different from our birth assignment is a complex process that requires time and reflection and may unfold gradually over developmental stages. Subsequent research suggests milestones instead of a process. Savin, Williams, and Cohen, 2015. These markers include first becoming aware of same-sex attractions, engaging in same-sex sexual activity, self-identifying as LGBTQ+, coming out to others, questioning the orientation, feeling different from others, and having a same-sex romantic relationship. Hall et al., 2021. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, or asexual identity intersects with other parts of a person's identity, like race, socioeconomic status, ability, and religion. Different ethnic groups may have unique views on LGBTQ+ identity due to cultural norms around family, religion, and sexuality. Green, 1994. For example, people of color may avoid openly disclosing their LGBTQ+ identity to prevent further marginalization and may face rejection from both their ethnic and LGBTQ+ communities, leading to multiple forms of oppression and a sense of abandoning their ethnic identity. Ackerland and Chung, 2000. A recent study examined how the timing and pacing of sexual identity development milestones differ across subgroups of Black, white, and Latino sexual minority individuals in the United States. Bishop et al., 2020.18. Using data from participants aged 18 to 60 years, it found that more recent cohorts reported earlier and faster milestone achievement than older cohorts. Gay men and those using newer identity labels, e.g., pansexual, reached milestones earlier, and Black and Latino participants reached some earlier than white participants. Bishop et al., 2020. A large-scale review of all existing literature revealed the average age at which various sexual minority individuals reached the milestones. Table 10.3. Note the average age of first sexual attraction is around 12 to 13 years of age, while the average age of first sexual contact is 18 years of age. Hall et al., 2019. This indicates that LGBTQ+ youth are experiencing first sexual contact about a year later than heterosexual youth. National Center for Health Statistics, 2017. Gender differences are mixed. For instance, men may take longer to come out and pursue LGBTQ+ relationships due to higher levels of internalized stigma. Barnes and Meyer, 2012. They often realize their same-sex attraction earlier than women and reach some milestones earlier, but they take longer to disclose their sexual identity after recognizing it. Martos et al., 2015. Katzweiss et al., 2017. Bisexual people were found to reach the milestones later than gay or lesbian people. Bisexual and lesbian women typically reach significant life milestones at older ages than bisexual and gay men. Katzweiss et al., 2017. A recent study of teenagers, born after 1997, showed that white LGBTQ+ teens are more likely to be open about their sexuality than Black and Asian teens. Gay teens are more open than bisexual or questioning teens, and those who experienced more victimization are also more open. Factors that made teens less likely to be open and more hesitant to come out include being religious, attending religious services, and feeling higher internalized stigma. Overall, outness among teens varies by sociocultural factors. Moskowitz et al., 2022. Younger cohorts may reach these milestones earlier, likely due to changing sociocultural attitudes and increased acceptance of sexual minorities. Heterosexual youth generally experience their first romantic relationship between 16.6 and 18 years of age. Hall et al., 2021. As much as 4 years earlier than do LGBTQ+ individuals. Thus, although the cultural landscape is quickly changing, social pressures and differential opportunities remain, resulting in a partially delayed timeline for today's LGBTQ+ youth. A positive environment for LGBTQ+ teens reduces stigma, leading to sexual identity development that aligns more closely with that of heterosexual youth and with the overall process of identity development. To support LGBTQ+ individuals in coming out, we can create safe spaces, provide access to supportive counseling, foster inclusive education, and encourage open and accepting dialogue within families and communities. Life hacks. How to support a teen who is coming out. About 60% more teens now identify as gay, bisexual, queer/questioning, or pansexual than in 2005. Most report at least a dawning awareness of their sexual orientation as early as childhood. Many came out to their parents in adolescence or young adulthood. The rate and timing of these disclosures are crucial, because openness about our identity has both positive and negative health outcomes. Recall that identity is multifaceted, and exploring and committing to an identity across various aspects of ourselves is beneficial to socio-emotional well-being. Coming out is the process of disclosing our sexual orientation to others, and it may be lifelong. One of the leading models envisions 6 stages in the process. Cass, 1979. It begins with identity confusion and a quest for information about sexual minority identities. The individual may then progress to initial tolerance and eventually full acceptance of their sexual identity. Finally, they often experience a blossoming, in which they develop a sense of pride and integrate their sexual identity into their self-concept. This process takes time, and the patience and support of others are critical throughout. While the process was documented by Cass based on research and widespread experience, it is not a blueprint and does not reflect the development and emotions of all people. Individuals explore and determine their identity at their own pace and in their own way, and supporters should not place expectations or assumptions on others. How can caregivers, teachers, peers, and mentors support young teens when they come out? PFLAG, the leading advocacy organization for LGBTQ+ individuals in the United States, offers this advice. Show your love. Remind the person they are loved, no matter how complex your feelings may be. A simple hug conveys a sense of belonging, acceptance, and love. Be open to listening. Someone newly coming out likely doesn't have all the words and answers, and you might not either. This is only the beginning of a journey. Practice active listening skills. Feel free to ask open-ended questions when the timing seems right to let the person know you are there to listen. A key step for mutual understanding. Show support. If overt actions don't feel right yet, subtle acts can still send powerful messages of support and acceptance. Talk positively about a movie or TV character who is LGBTQ+. Mention news items relevant to sexual minorities to convey your awareness and support of the issues. Learn the vocabulary. Many terms associated with the LGBTQ+ community overlap or have nuanced meanings. You may make mistakes, but willingness to learn about and use the terminology is a concrete way to show support. Take care of yourself, go for a walk, practice mindfulness, and give yourself time to sort through your own thoughts and emotions as you consider this complex aspect of the person's identity. Start early by being aware of your language, including to very young children. One way to signal you are an ally is to avoid heteronormative language like, "Oh, the boys will be banging down your door one day," when complimenting a female youth, or "I bet the girls love you" when complimenting a male youth. 17-year-old Jasmine has been looking forward to the big school dance 2 weeks from now. She's particularly excited because this is the first time she is going with a date rather than with friends. She met her date while hanging out with mutual friends over the summer. Aside from a shared interest in art and sci-fi movies, they connected over their shared experience of being neurodiverse. Their friendship has grown into a more intimate relationship, and they recently kissed for the first time. This dance will be the first time their classmates will see them as a couple, and Jasmine's excitement is mixed with a bit of pride and concern. What will everyone think of the two of us together? Will they wonder if we're a good match? What will we do after the dance? She wonders whether she's ready to commit to this person, to share her hopes and plans and fears with them. And she worries about whether there are unspoken expectations for getting more physically intimate. She doesn't feel ready for more yet. Nevertheless, she is eager to see what new experiences lie ahead. Figure 10.9. Many parts of development are informed by our own and others' expectations based on the various social contexts in our lives. These include peers, friends, intimate relationships, plus the context of media and education. A key part of healthy adolescence is exploring and developing one's identity across these contexts. Peer influences on development. Brain development in adolescence supports a heightened interest in peers and other social cues, and an increased sensitivity to the rewards they can offer. The sophisticated new skills that come with these cognitive developments allow teens to apply increasingly advanced reasoning about social experiences, including hypothetical ones like everyone is watching. Elkind's concept of the imaginary audience. Recall also that one of the many developmental tasks facing adolescents is a gradual turning outward from the family and toward society at large. Haverhurst, 1973. Manning, 2002. Peers and peer relations become a transitional force, allowing adolescents to do just that. Brown and Larson, 2009. Rubin et al., 2006. Against the backdrop of these developments, society also purposefully restructures the environment of adolescents, who spend 1/3 or more of each weekday in school, where they interact with their peers almost every day. Adolescence, then, is a time of heightened sociability, often beyond the direct supervision of parents or other adults. Through friendships as well as membership in peer groupings of different sizes, adolescents build and maintain a reputation, gain status within the larger group, and climb the social ladder. Friendships. A friendship is an intimate, emotionally close relationship between two individuals. Brown and Larson, 2009. Friendships form based on similar interests such as music or sports, and may dissipate if those interests change over time. However, as adolescence progresses, and as individuals actively explore and form their identity, friendships tend to become more stable and enduring. Intimacy is a key feature of friendship, and in a psychological sense, it means making ourselves vulnerable to another. Especially in early and mid-adolescence, friendships can be exclusive and intense, relying on trust and mutual support. Later in adolescence, this intensity is often transferred to a romantic relationship. Costello et al., 2023. Wesche et al., 2023. Research in multiple countries has consistently found that males tend to share personal information with a single best friend, whereas females tend to disclose evenly among their close friends. Ko et al., 2015. Kitts and Leal, 2021. However, it does vary. For example, male students at a Japanese university reported sharing more personal information with close friends than female students did. Fankhauser, 2018. This was true overall, and for specific topics. The study used two different measures of self-disclosure, both showing similar results, especially in cross-gender friendships. It also found that feeling close to a friend and trusting the friendship's stability were linked to more self-disclosure. Fankhauser, 2018. These findings highlight the role friendships serve. Adolescents switch some of their needs for social and emotional support from their parents to close friends, and in turn, these needs for intimacy are also brought into romantic relationships later on. Cliques. A close group of 3 to a dozen or so friends is called a clique. Brown and Larson, 2009. Cliques serve many functions for developing adolescents. First, they break the larger social environment into one of more manageable size, and offer a context in which much socialization, hanging out, occurs, both within and outside the school setting. They also provide a source of emotional support for members, as well as a sense of belonging and encouragement. McFarland et al., 2014. For example, a group of close-knit friends in a clique who share similar interests, such as skateboarding or a science club, can be there to listen and offer advice during challenging times. When a teen is stressed about an upcoming exam, their clique might organize a study session to help all members prepare, boosting both academic performance and emotional well-being. And they can offer encouragement and celebrate each other's successes, such as cheering on a member at a competition or congratulating them on a good achievement in the classroom. An analysis of adolescents from about 170 secondary school classrooms asked students to identify the cliques in their school and nominate peers as members of each. Patasolano et al., 2015. First, the study found the average size of a clique was just shy of 6 members, 5.72 to be exact. Second, researchers discovered that some cliques have a status hierarchy, while others are more equality-driven or egalitarian. Patasolano et al., 2015. Peer status matters in the larger social context of the adolescent world, because both aggression and pro-social helping behavior are related to social standing. Thus, being a member of a higher status clique could offer protection against aggression from others, while being a member of a low status clique could be disadvantageous. The term relational aggression refers to the practice of including or excluding others, or otherwise threatening a sense of belonging, such as by spreading gossip. It was associated more with egalitarian cliques. This makes sense, though. One purpose of a social hierarchy is to spell out exactly where everyone stands in relation to one another. In an egalitarian group, this is not as easy to discern, and when members are striving for status, an increase in aggression can result. More pro-social behavior toward other members was found within hierarchical groups, as was increased aggression toward other cliques. Quan and Lise, 2007, Zhao and Li, 2022. This result shows both the function and the power of cliques to support those within the group and to advocate for social standing against other groups. Crowds. A larger social grouping in the social milieu of adolescence is called a crowd, and it can have many dozens of members, not all of whom are necessarily friends or even know each other. Crowds can be made up of different cliques and often form around various activities, interests, aspects of youth culture, such as anime, or members' personality characteristics, social status, or reputation. Brown and Larson, 2009, Figure 10.10. Common crowd names in U.S. high schools include populars, jocks, brains, and normals. Crabb et al., 2019. The names of crowds may change, but the presence of these common themes in crowds has been around for quite some time. How do individuals become part of a crowd during adolescence? Crowds come together through both selection, people with similar values, interests, and experiences find each other, and socialization. Members reinforce shared attitudes and behaviors to uphold their identity and sense of belonging. Research suggests that academic orientation, athleticism, and physical appearance are among the primary characteristics through which teens sort themselves from an early age onward. Brown and Larson, 2009. And that ethnic and racial group membership are not. Brown et al., 2008. One way to think of crowds and cliques is that crowds exist as part of the large social backdrop of adolescence, while actual peer relationships occur within and between cliques and friendships. For most adolescents, the way their peers view them is very important, and not being accepted can lead to problems like relational aggression and poor academic performance. Lorine et al., 2022. Girls are especially likely to worry about conflicts and being rejected by their peers. Chesney Lind and Irwin, 2008. Girls who feel rejected often seek attention and form cliques to feel accepted. Hamilton, 2010. Popular students may act aggressively because they believe their high status protects them from negative consequences. Within these cliques, teens join the same activities and spend free time together, creating a strong social network. In contrast, less popular students interact less with their classmates and have fewer close friends. Overall, teen friendships help organize social interactions in the classroom, affecting teen mental health and behavior. Long et al., 2021. Casper et al., 2020. Peer social risks. Teens who struggle to find a social group often face significant isolation and loneliness, which are linked to various negative outcomes, including increased risk of depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. Lorson and Hartle, 2013. Social isolation can also hinder academic performance and school engagement, since the peer support that can encourage and motivate the individual is lacking. Wenzel, 2005. Feelings of exclusion can also arise, and the absence of support increases the likelihood of engaging in harmful behaviors as a coping mechanism. Hockley and Capitano, 2015. For example, teenagers who feel isolated and lack positive social connections often seek acceptance in alternative groups, which can include gangs. Dmitrieva et al., 2014. Gangs offer a sense of community and identity, though through engagement in deviant behaviors. Addressing social isolation in teens and providing positive social support systems through parents, teachers, mentors, and community programs are critical to prevent gang involvement, as well as promote overall well-being and teen mental health. Romantic relationships and dating. All the social, physical, emotional, and cognitive developments that occur during adolescence create new ways for us to relate to one another within a romantic relationship. A romantic relationship is a bond psychologically distinct from mere liking and includes components of affection, intimacy, exclusivity, and interdependence. Aaron et al., 2006. Most adolescents enter into at least one romantic relationship during their teenage years. Lenhart et al., 2015. As part of the larger trend of shifting their focus from their family of origin toward peers and the larger society. Collins, 2003. Brown, 2004, Sorensen, 2007. Romantic relationships offer the developing adolescent space to explore what it means to be vulnerable, intimate, and connected to another individual, and to find a new source of support and comfort from a peer. Jorgensen-Wells et al., 2021. They also provide valuable experience in relating to others in a way that will become a major focus in early adulthood. Attachment. Recall that our internal working models of relationships provide us with scripts, including what we can expect from a relationship and how others are likely to behave. With these models, adolescents bring their full relationship and attachment history into their first and subsequent romantic relationships. According to Hazan and Shaver, 1987, both the ability to enter romantic relationships and the quality of those relationships are also connected to an individual's attachment history. 4.4. Social development in infants and toddlers. Individuals with a secure attachment history bring several assets to an adolescent romantic relationship. These include effective communication skills like listening and sharing, appropriate emotional expression, the ability to assert and negotiate needs and expectations, and the capacity to seek support from and provide it to a partner. Carroll et al., 2007, Halford, 2011, Figure 10.11. Such individuals also show skill in approaching others, forming intimate connections, and benefiting from such connections. They exhibit greater warmth and understanding and use a more constructive approach to resolving disputes. Tan et al., 2016. Which is essential because conflicts within a romantic relationship often arouse strong emotions. Adolescents who have developed insecure attachment styles, including anxious preoccupied, termed ambivalent in childhood, and avoidant, bring different experiences, expectations, and skill sets to their first romantic relationships. Brar et al., 2023. Choi et al., 2022. De Niro et al., 2008. Stavropoulos et al., 2018. Those with an anxious preoccupied attachment history are interested in forming romantic relationships and enter such relationships eagerly. However, because of the inconsistent support and confusing mix of disappointment and frustration in their previous relationships, they often lack the confidence that a romantic relationship will bring all the benefits they are hoping for. Instead, they may seek frequent reassurance from their partner about their commitment and support. Romantic partners in turn often experience this need for reassurance as clinginess and may try to distance themselves emotionally. Ironically, this reaction is exactly what the internal working model of someone with anxious preoccupied attachment predicts. Any resulting distancing, rejection, or breakup reinforces that model. Adolescents with an avoidant attachment history don't expect much from a romantic relationship, are overly self-reliant, and approach close relationships with skepticism and worry. These expectations often color their experience of early romantic relationships. Any instance of dissatisfaction leads them to withdraw, further reinforcing their internal working model. Stavropoulos et al., 2018. A central tenet of attachment theory, however, is that partnering with someone who has a secure attachment style can benefit individuals with an anxious, preoccupied, or avoidant attachment history. For instance, research shows that teenagers who engage in positive peer relationships, receive mentoring, and experience supportive school environments can develop healthy attachments and show resilience despite early challenges with unhealthy attachment patterns. Grossman et al., 2005. Thus, we see the potential for positive development and reworking of the insecurely attached individual's internal working model within the context of romantic relationships. Dating violence and unhealthy relationships. Teen interpersonal health risks often stem from their socio-emotional needs for dating and establishing romantic relationships with appropriate peers. Romantic relationships are crucial for socio-emotional development because they help to develop intimacy skills and shape identity and autonomy. Connolly and McIsaac, 2009. However, they can also generate intense emotions and conflicts, sometimes with the potential for teen dating violence, TDV. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 2024, defines dating violence as a variety of unsafe behaviors inflicted on a partner. Psychological dating violence includes manipulative actions aimed at indirectly harming the partner. Physical dating violence can range from pushing and slapping to more severe acts like beating, kicking, or strangling. Sexual TDV includes forced sexual activities, from unwanted touching to forced penetration. Stalking is a pattern of repeated, unwanted attention and contact by a current or former partner that causes fear or safety concerns for an individual or someone close to them. CDC 2024. Many adolescents report experiencing violence in their romantic relationships. Data from the 2011 to 2021 Youth Risk Behavior Surveys show significant rates of these experiences among U.S. high school students, with notable disparities affecting females, racial and ethnic minorities, and sexual minority youths. Bazile 2020. In 2021, 8.5% reported physical dating violence, 9.7% reported sexual dating violence, 11.0% reported sexual violence, 15% experienced bullying at school, and 15.9% faced electronic bullying. Clayton, 2023. A meta-analysis by Wincentak et al., 2017, found that 20% of teens aged 13 to 18 years have experienced physical dating violence, and 9% have experienced sexual dating violence. Given how common dating violence is, and the severity of its effects, including psychological distress, suicidal thoughts, and post-traumatic symptoms, Exner-Cortens et al. 2013, Hebert et al. 2017, it is now seen as a serious public health problem. A recent study of late-stage adolescents' views on romantic relationships found that while teens can identify healthy and unhealthy relationship traits, some find it hard to see jealousy and possessiveness as negative behaviors, often mistaking them for signs of strong interest. Brar et al. 2023. Programs promoting healthy dating behaviors, clarifying unhealthy traits, teaching respectful conflict resolution, and encouraging intervention in abusive situations can benefit all teens. Fauci et al. 2014. Teen dating violence, sexual violence, and bullying during adolescence are linked to health and behavioral issues in adulthood. Victimized teens may engage in risky behaviors like substance misuse or develop eating disorders as coping mechanisms. Batchelder et al. 2022. Studies also indicate that TDV is longitudinally associated with increasing high-risk behaviors, such as marijuana and alcohol use, and poor mental health outcomes. Pielanti et al. 2023. Trauma can also impair academic performance and social relationships, leading to isolation. Kava et al. 2020, and further emotional distress. Addressing these risks requires comprehensive sex and relationship education, preventative socio-emotional health services, and accessible intervention support to ensure teens can establish and maintain healthy, respectful relationships. For instance, the reality of TDV should be included in school curricula focused on sex and relationship education. Schools must commit to fostering a violence-free social environment and encourage bystander intervention. Banyard et al. 2020. Media as context for development. Peer relationships rightly take center stage as an important context for adolescent development. However, media, including social media, are also a central feature of adolescent life and are intricately linked to social relationships. Teens' media diet, usually characterized by excessive screen time, often includes social media and messaging apps, which can lead to problematic behaviors like sexting, the transmission of sexually suggestive or explicit images via texts, and sexual harassment. Studies show that increased phone use is associated with higher risks of exposure to inappropriate content and cyberbullying, with negative impacts on teens' mental health and psychological well-being. Media diet. What do we know about the media diet of teenagers today? The most relevant indicator is screen time, which includes time spent watching videos online, playing or watching others play video games, using tablets for creative purposes, using virtual reality devices, browsing the internet, using social media apps, and reading ebooks. Average daily screen time for teenagers in 2021 was 8 hours and 39 minutes, an increase from 6 hours and 40 minutes daily in 2015. Rideout et al. 2022. Research shows that 77% of teens watch online videos every day and spend an average of 90 minutes a day using social media apps such as Instagram and Snapchat. The Pew Research Center reports that 19% of teens use YouTube almost constantly, and 16% use TikTok with the same level of intensity. Vogels, 2022. Figure 10.12. Teens from lower-income households report the highest screen use, averaging 7 hours and 32 minutes per day. The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to 2023 markedly increased media use by teenagers. Contributing factors included society-wide shutdowns of schools and other gathering places, and social distancing protocols that made technology necessary for human interaction. Teenagers spent an average of more than 11 hours a day in front of screens during the pandemic, including for schooling. For more than 40% of them, this increase also meant more social media and video viewing. Hamilton et al. 2023, Marciano et al. 2022. Social media did let teens stay connected with one another during the pandemic, however, and its use then has been linked to lower stress, boredom, and loneliness among youth. In contrast to findings about social media use and adolescent psychological health post-pandemic, Marciano et al., 2022. There is a significant rise in anxiety, depression, and mental health issues among teenagers, which is linked to increased screen time and social media use. For example, the amount of media information about the pandemic itself increased teens' feelings of anxiety. Researchers suggest that digital interactions contribute to a decline in face-to-face social skills and an increase in feelings of loneliness and inadequacy. They emphasize the need for reduced screen exposure to improve mental well-being in young people. Twenja, 2020, Height, 2024. When adolescents use their screen time as a replacement for social interactions, negative effects do emerge, such as a less positive body image, lower self-esteem, and an uptick in eating disorders. Ramsey et al., 2023. Psychological effects. What do we know about the psychological effects of extensive media use? First, there are some positives. The primary purpose of all media is to communicate and entertain, facilitate interaction and engagement, especially over long distances, give exposure to new ideas and perspectives, and foster collaboration. American Academy of Pediatrics, 2016. Media sources also provide a way for isolated individuals to connect more easily with other people and resources, and an easier entry point to social interaction for those who may be shy or isolated. Some media are also extremely effective at advocating for certain positions or attitudes, so they can help spread positive and healthy information. Psychologists, health professionals, and communications experts have also documented several physical health risks of media use. In a review of the literature, the American Academy of Pediatrics, 2016, reports a 5-fold increase in the chance of developing obesity among teens who watch more than 5 hours of media per day. One reason is an increase in snacking or passive eating during television viewing. Heavy media use can also increase sleep disturbances in teens and adults. The blue cast to the light of screens interferes with the body's melatonin levels, and adolescents have different sleep needs than children. These physical health risks can in turn increase psychological and socio-emotional health risks. In a systematic review of 50 studies from 17 countries, researchers found that social media use is linked to body image concerns, eating disorders, and poor mental health among young individuals aged 10 to 24 years. Social media exposure may lead to negative body image perceptions and contribute to the rising prevalence of eating disorders, emphasizing the potential global public health significance of this issue. Dane and Bhatia, 2023. Higher media use is predictive of a long list of other negative impacts, including increased alcohol and tobacco use, Luica et al., 2018. Earlier initiation of sexual behaviors, Smith et al., 2016. Desensitization or normalization of certain negative content such as self-harming and disordered eating, increased risk of cyberbullying as target or perpetrator, and sexting, Bazzola et al., 2023. Sexting and sexual harassment. According to the CDC 2019, sexual violence can occur in person, online, or via technology, as in the cases of posting or sharing sexual pictures of someone without their consent or non-consensual sexting. Technology allows people to reach an audience virtually anywhere and at any time, and it is increasingly simple to involve someone by using images and/or videos. Teens report considerable pressure to sext. Abile et al., 2014. Lunde and Jolby, 2023. 15% reported having sent a sext, and 25% had received one. Giordano et al., 2022. A recent study looked at how common abusive sexting is among Portuguese teens, and the psychological traits of those involved, like emotional issues, signs of psychopathy, and past trauma. Barroso et al., 2021. Among 12 to 20-year-old participants, about 4.8% admitted to abusive sexting, and 4.3% reported being victims. Abusive sexting was more frequent among males and those in mid-adolescence, and both perpetrators and victims had higher rates of emotional and behavioral problems, childhood abuse, and aggression. Barroso et al., 2021. Abusive messages can easily be forwarded to large groups of recipients without the subject's permission. The age of consent, which varies state to state and country to country, is the minimum age at which an individual can legally make decisions to engage in sexual behavior. In some U.S. states, it is a crime to merely receive a sext from someone under the age of consent, depending on the age difference between sender and recipient. According to the Cyberbullying Research Center, In 27 of 50 U.S. states and the District of Columbia, the legal age of consent for sexual acts is 16 years old, and a sexting law is in place. In 9 states, the legal age for sexting is 17 years old, and in 11 states, the age of consent is 18 years old. CRC 2022. Many teenagers believe it is acceptable to exchange sexts with someone they are dating or are sexually involved with, but this is not legally true. Sending sexts can lead to serious social consequences if the images are shared or spread widely. Strasburger et al. 2019. When sexting occurs outside legal boundaries or includes coercion and pressure, it constitutes another form of sexual abuse and harassment, posing significant psychological risks for teens. Victims often experience anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues as a result. According to the Cyberbullying Research Center, approximately 12% of U.S. adolescents have been coerced into sending explicit images, highlighting the prevalence of this form of sexual victimization. Patchen and Hinduja 2020. Another form of sexual harassment is the use of deepfakes, digitally manipulated videos or images that create realistic but false representations of individuals. Sexually explicit deepfakes are of growing concern. Sharing them can be devastating to adolescents. Christoph 2024. Victims can experience anxiety, depression, and harm to their personal and professional lives. Rouse 2023. Protecting teens against sexual deepfakes requires a multifaceted approach, including educating them about the risks of sharing personal images online, promoting sufficient digital literacy to recognize and report deepfakes, and advocating for stronger legal protections and enforcement against their creation and distribution. Citron, 2019. Best practices for healthy media use. How can we mitigate the risks associated with heavy media use? The American Academy of Pediatrics, AAP 2016, recommends that pediatricians partner with parents and educators to communicate the effects of media, both positive and negative. Healthcare professionals should also emphasize healthy activity levels, maximum of 1 hour of screen time per day, and adequate sleep for teens. Recommend that children and teens not sleep with their electronic devices in their rooms, and advocate for media literacy programs in school curricula, youth organization programming, and family discussions. The U.S. Surgeon General's advisory emphasizes making policy and program changes at the government level, like advocating for media literacy curricula in schools, requiring strict data privacy protections by tech companies that create apps used by teens, and continuing to research and develop usage guidelines. United States Department of Health and Human Services, 2023. Families are urged to develop a family media plan that sets boundaries for technology use at home and to create tech-free zones and time periods, such as family meals. Parents should also model appropriate media use for their children. While phones can be a major source of distraction due to games and social media, they also offer valuable resources for media consumption, such as audiobooks, music, educational apps, and news. By setting clear guidelines and discussing the importance of balance, parents can help their teens develop healthy habits. AAP 2016. Encouraging responsible use means setting time limits, promoting tech-free family times, and discussing the potential risks and benefits of various apps and online activities. Rideout and Rob 2018. Recreational apps and games can also promote relaxation and improve cognitive skills like problem-solving and hand-eye coordination. One particular form of media deserves a special focus: music. Listening to music is one of the hallmark behaviors of adolescence, and music is a part of youth culture that helps to connect each cohort. Robert Sapolsky, 1998, posited that our interest in new music wanes at around age 35 years, and that the music we listen to in our teenage years largely forms the basis for our lifelong musical preferences. One study found that listening to music was the most common strategy teens use for self-regulation. Saricalio and Erkila, 2007. Other reasons for playing music are for entertainment, sensation-seeking, relaxing, discharge of energy, diversion, and solace. Baltazar 2019. Developing a set of musical preferences is another way adolescents can explore and develop their identities. It's likely that teens and adults curate playlists in part so they can have music ready to help them cope with their changing emotional states. Cook et al. 2019. After a frustrating day at school, for example, a 15-year-old may listen to some heavy metal music, nodding to the ferocious beats and discharging some of that negative energy. elevating her mood. Education and academic achievement in adolescent development. During adolescence, youth undergoes significant cognitive development, including improvements in abstract thinking, problem-solving abilities, and critical reasoning skills. Therefore, educational materials and requirements should be appropriately challenging to stimulate cognitive growth without being overwhelming. Goodness of fit in education refers to the compatibility or alignment between the educational environment and the needs, abilities, and characteristics of individual students. We know that students come from diverse backgrounds. Thus, an optimal learning experience would occur when these factors are appropriately matched with the educational context. For instance, offering a variety of teaching techniques and resources to accommodate diverse learning preferences and personal circumstances. Additionally, adolescents benefit from incorporating breaks and varied activities to maintain engagement and prevent fatigue. Academic achievement outcomes are multifaceted and heavily influenced by environmental contexts, including family and sociocultural factors and individual disparities. Outcomes. What kinds of outcomes in academic achievement does schooling produce? The high school graduation rate for the United States overall was 86% in the 2018-2019 school year, NCES 2021. This number has increased consistently since it was first tracked at the national level in 2011. Group-level differences were observed, however. For Asian American/Pacific Islander students, the rate is 93%, for white students 89%, for Hispanic students 82%, for Black students 80%, and for Native American students 74%. The U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics, NCES, produces the Nation's Report Card, a semi-annual snapshot of 4th, 8th, and 12th grade achievement in mathematics and reading, among other subject areas. NCES 2021. The most recently available data for 12th grade are for 2019, 1 year prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. For mathematics, 60% of 12th grade students met or exceeded the basic competence level nationwide, while just 24% met or exceeded what the NCES calls a proficient level of achievement, figure 10.13. This represented a slight decrease in achievement compared with each assessment dating back to 2009. Males and females achieved at roughly similar levels. There were significant mathematics achievement gaps between students from different ethno-racial groups, as well as for students from households with different parental levels of schooling, and also for students who were English language learners. For example, students whose native language was not English showed the largest mathematics achievement gap compared to native English speakers. Finally, the greater the educational attainment of parents, the higher the mathematics achievement of their children. Adolescent children of college-educated parents scored higher on average than children whose parents did not graduate from high school. Educational attainment is one of the main components of socioeconomic status, an indicator of the level of social and economic resources a person or family has at their disposal. To support students, it is imperative that governments provide access to high-quality early childhood education programs to help level the playing field for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Addressing disparities in disciplinary actions and providing culturally responsive curriculum and instruction can foster the academic success of marginalized and disadvantaged students. Finally, socioeconomically disadvantaged students often demonstrate remarkable resilience and perseverance and are highly motivated to succeed academically with the goal to improve their circumstances. Anyaka, 2017. By 12th grade, we see similar patterns emerging for reading achievement. Figure 10.14. The NCES reports slight declines in reading achievement levels between 2015 and 2019 for male students and for those whose parents had some education beyond high school. NCES 2021. Otherwise, scores and achievement gaps between groups were stable for 12th graders across that time period. Gaps include a difference in favor of students whose parents had graduated from college versus students from homes where the parents did not finish high school, and large achievement gaps between native English speakers and English language learners and between Asian and Black students. Socio-demographic factors in achievement disparities. When the COVID-19 pandemic began in March 2020, children in the United States experienced major disruptions in schooling, particularly in socially and economically vulnerable groups. Bansack and Starr, 2021. Bailey et al., 2021, Maldonado and DeWitt, 2022. Parents from families with low incomes were more likely to be essential workers exposed to the COVID-19 virus and less likely to have access to high-quality health care. Berube and Bateman 2020. Additionally, these families were less likely than families with higher income to have reliable internet access and computers at home, which made it harder for children in these homes to participate in online education. Stellatano et al. 2020. Children in families with low income are also more likely to join public schools that lack the resources needed to support teachers in delivering high-quality online instruction. Additionally, parents with low income are less able to provide extra instructional support through private tutoring and other enrichment activities. Lee et al. 2021. Research from China and Indonesia indicates that students in rural regions experienced more negative impacts after school closures during the pandemic compared to students in urban areas, e.g., Pisani et al. 2021. Black teens are often aware of the racialized nature of achievement disparities. They are frequently reminded of these disparities in their schools as well as on social media. Hope et al. 2015. For example, a longitudinal study noted that adolescents' structural attributions, i.e., awareness of systemic and institutional factors that contribute to disparities, for racial achievement gaps increased from grade 10 to grade 12. Bañales et al. 2020. However, when Black students recognize that such factors are rooted in historical and ongoing patterns of discrimination and inequality within educational systems and broader society, it works as an adaptive mechanism for their psychological development. When perceiving the causes of achievement disparities as external rather than internal, they see that their ability level is not fixed, which can help students establish a growth mindset and improve academic outcomes. Ability grouping, also known as tracking, is a practice in education where students are placed into different classes or groups based on their perceived academic abilities or achievement levels. This practice involves assigning students into tracks based on their prior achievement or ability level, Loveless, 2013, such as honors, regular, or remedial classes, with each track offering varying levels of curriculum difficulty and academic rigor. The primary goal of this placement is to create a more uniform learning environment, allowing teachers to tailor their instruction more effectively to students' needs, and enabling students to benefit from interactions with their peers. Steenberg and Hu et al. 2016. However, it can promote educational inequalities, perpetuate stereotypes, and reinforce self-fulfilling prophecies, wherein students internalize and conform to expectations associated with their assigned track. This is especially seen among students belonging to ethnic minority groups and students of lower SESEG, Francis et al. 2017, Peterson et al. 2016. Furthermore, such separating of students based on ability contributes to achievement gaps between different social groups, as stereotype threat disproportionately affects marginalized students who are targets of negative stereotypes. Stereotype threat refers to the phenomenon where individuals experience anxiety or fear of confirming negative stereotypes about their social group, which can impair their performance in academic or other achievement-related tasks. Spencer et al. 2016. Familial and sociocultural factors in academic achievement and disparities. The role of family, peer, and cultural influences on academic achievement trajectories is multifaceted and complex, as myriad factors influence students' beliefs, behaviors, and experiences. At the familial level, there are SES, parental education level, parental involvement, as well as parental expectations. For example, the level of parental involvement in a child's education, including monitoring homework, attending school events, and communicating with teachers, is strongly associated with academic success. Harper et al., 2012. At the social level, school climate, disciplinary practices, peer pressure, and influence of academic motivation are some of the forces that can drive a teen's academic achievement trajectory. School climate is defined as the quality and character of school life, which is derived from patterns of people's experiences of school life and reflects norms, goals, values, interpersonal relationships, teaching, learning and leadership practices, and organizational structures. Cohen et al., 2009, page 182. Research shows that a positive school climate helps protect against the negative contribution of poor SES background on academic achievement. Berkowitz et al., 2017. A longitudinal study conducted in Los Angeles high schools found that students who experienced authoritative school environments, characterized by high levels of support and structure, exhibited higher levels of self-efficacy and grit in subsequent years. Wong et al., 2021. Additionally, these students reported fewer depressive symptoms, less hopelessness, and reduced stress at school and about the future over time. The study highlights the significant association between a supportive and warm school climate and improved social-emotional health among adolescents. It suggests that interventions focusing on enhancing relationships with teachers and implementing supportive disciplinary practices may be beneficial for promoting the social-emotional well-being of students. Wong et al., 2021. Additionally, one's cultural capital, cultural values and beliefs about education, and cultural identity impact academic performance and achievement trajectory. Specifically, cultural resources such as language, knowledge, values, and traditions passed down within communities can influence students' academic achievement, e.g., Anderson and Yeager, 2015. School absenteeism, i.e., temporary periods of unexcused school absence, and permanent school dropout, are both complex issues influenced by various risk factors that can occur at the individual, family, social, school, and community levels. According to the NCES 2018, 13 to 15% of 8th to 12th graders were absent at least 3 days a month, and approximately 6% were absent at least 5 days a month. A comprehensive report from the U.S. Department of Education 2016 revealed that students with disabilities exhibited higher rates of chronic absenteeism compared to their peers without disabilities. Similarly, Native American and Pacific Islander students displayed a greater tendency for chronic absenteeism when compared to students from other racial and ethnic backgrounds. Additionally, non-ELL students were found to have a higher likelihood of chronic absenteeism in comparison to their ELL counterparts, Garcia and Weiss, 2018. Understanding the reasons why teens drop out of high school is fundamental to improving intervention efforts to promote graduation. Risk factors for school absenteeism include negative attitudes toward school, problematic substance use, both externalizing and internalizing behaviors, and limited parent-school involvement. Gubbles et al., 2019. In terms of dropout, risk factors include a history of poor academic achievement, lower IQ, and learning difficulties. Gubbles et al., 2019. In addition, earlier research found extreme parental permissiveness to be associated with higher rates of dropping out. Rumberger et al., 1990. In a similar vein, researchers conducted a survey with young adults who left high school prior to completion. The researchers identified several influential stressors that increased the decision to leave school, including mobility, family dynamics, peer influences, school engagement and environment, health issues, and involvement in crime. Issues related to school engagement and the overall school environment were among the most common reasons. McDermott et al., 2019. Hence, addressing the risk factors for school absenteeism and dropout requires a comprehensive, multifaceted approach that involves collaboration between schools, families, communities, and policymakers. Interventions. Of note is a large-scale intervention undertaken in the United States in the 1950s and 1960s, namely the racial integration of schools. Pickren, 2004. Stanley, 2017. In Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that separate but equal educational access and services were inherently unequal and ordered an end to racial segregation in the U.S. education system. By the mid-1970s, the first Black students who were young children at the time of the original ruling and its reaffirmation 10 years later showed dramatic increases in academic achievement on national standardized tests. What this highlights is that large-scale improvements in social status and access to resources, along with the general push toward leveling the socioeconomic playing field, can have a big impact on learning for minority subgroups. This evidence points a path forward. As societies address equity gaps in a variety of domains of life, we should see generational increases in achievement levels. Hanashek et al., 2019. Over time, group-level achievement gaps should close with continued prevention and intervention efforts focused on creating equity. The Brown decision is an example of a large-scale, society-wide intervention. Psychologists working in educational settings also focus on identifying individual-level psychological factors that have some bearing on educational outcomes. Some key ones include self-determination theory, Ryan and Decky, 2017, expectancy value theory, Harakowitz et al., 2016, the stereotype threat process, Spencer et al., 2016, the concept of self-efficacy, Bandura, 1997, Schober et al., 2018, and the collection of achievement motivation ideas currently known as growth mindset, Dweck, 2017. Across these diverse psychological processes and applications, one theme emerges. A student's level of achievement motivation is strongly sensitive to the social environment. Adolescent learners, in particular, are highly attuned to the achievement-related messages they receive from their peers, teachers, parents, and broader culture. 15-year-old Michael wakes up 20 minutes early each day so he can help his younger brother get ready for school. While his stepmother is downstairs hurriedly stirring eggs on the stove while getting dressed for work and feeding the dog, Michael reminds his brother to make his bed before he heads downstairs. After breakfast, Michael's stepmother looks for the car keys. But Michael is already outside, having taken the keys to warm up the car on this wintry morning. Later that morning, while in school, Michael receives a text from his stepmom. "Thank you for helping us this morning. Pizza for dinner? I love you." After school, the brothers go to the after-school program offered at the nearby community center. Michael does homework while his brother plays with his friends in the gym. Both are excited to see their stepmother's car pull up shortly after 5 p.m. time for pizza. Family life is a central feature in the lives of adolescents, serving as the anchor for their experiences. Caregivers and family structure play an important role in teenagers' lives, as does the influence of the broader community. The influence of parenting styles. Although adolescence is a time of gradual turning toward the broader society, parents are still obviously an important source of support and guidance in adolescents' lives. Recall the 4 main clusters of parenting styles: authoritative, high warmth, high structure; indulgent or permissive, high warmth, low structure; authoritarian, low warmth, high structure; and neglectful or uninvolved, low warmth, low structure. Baumrind, 1971. McCoby and Martin, 1983. The authoritative parenting style is associated with many positive outcomes for adolescents, just as it is for younger children. Figure 10.15. These outcomes include a more positive self-concept, more positive orientation toward school and academic competence, and fewer problem behaviors. Dagnew, 2015. Fabianti and Rahmawati, 2021. Steinberg et al., 1994. In a follow-up, researchers found these outcomes held steady 1 year later, explaining that parenting style at that point helped maintain adolescents' positive adjustment. Steinberg et al., 1994. Another study examined the relationships between parenting styles, academic self-concept, academic motivation, and academic achievement among Ethiopian students. The findings showed that the authoritative parenting style had a positive correlation with academic achievement, while authoritarian and permissive styles had negative correlations. There was no significant relationship with the neglectful style. Academic self-concept, intrinsic motivation, and extrinsic motivation were all positively related to academic achievement. Dagnew, 2015. As you might expect, the opposite pattern was found for the neglectful parenting style, and the outcomes for adolescents of authoritarian and permissive styles fell somewhere between. A wealth of studies sought to replicate and extend Baumrind's parenting style theory, focusing on 2 underlying dimensions that help explain how parenting style is related to adolescent outcomes: warmth, level of responsiveness to the child's needs, and structure, level of demands and rules for age-appropriate behavior. First, given that a central developmental task for adolescents is to assume control and responsibility for their own behavior, called developing behavioral autonomy, it makes sense that the responsiveness and clearly communicated expectations in authoritative parenting create an ideal environment for this task. Parental authority is respected, even as the teen increases their own sense of behavioral autonomy. Second, the expectations of authoritarian parenting can come across as unwelcome and interfere with growing behavioral autonomy. Bai et al., 2018. It depends. Can your parent be your friend? An intriguing question is whether a caregiver can or even should be considered a friend of their child. On one hand, we might say yes. Parents and children/adolescents are in a very close, emotionally significant relationship and spend a lot of time together. From another perspective, we could say no, because caregivers and children/adolescents play very different roles, with different responsibilities, concerns, and amount of power. Baumrind's research, 1971, on parenting styles can help us make sense of this question by focusing on what is in the best interest of the child or adolescent. As you've learned, the authoritative parenting style is considered the most conducive to supporting appropriate development of children and adolescents. The winning combination of clear expectations and guidelines for behavior, communicated within a warm and loving relationship, helps developing adolescents understand and internalize the underlying reasons for the expectations. Researchers have found that teens actually prefer to have guidance because it gives them a sense of security and direction in a rather complex world. Collins and Steinberg, 2006. Elkind, 1998. The permissive style of parenting includes the warmth and daily involvement of the authoritative style, but lacks the necessary guidance. Permissive parents often see themselves as friends of their children and are uncomfortable about or unwilling to set limits, perhaps to avoid disappointing their child or upsetting them. Although this avoids conflict in the moment, the developing teenager is left with little guidance and faces a bewildering number of decisions and scenarios across adolescence without parental guardrails to guide them. Elkind, 1998. The findings are clear. Across a wide range of cultures and family types, adolescents and younger children do well when caregivers give them both warmth and structure. The way caregivers achieve this balance can differ based on their family dynamics and various contextual factors in the child's environment. Parent-teen conflict. A common notion about adolescence is that a high level of stress or conflict always arises between teens and parents. While hormonal fluctuations can play a small role in the day-to-day moods of developing teens, such temporary irritability can't account for the full nature of the conflict developmental psychologists have studied. Strife between teens and parents does heighten during the adolescent period, but it becomes less frequent as adolescence progresses. Shanahan et al., 2007. The emotional intensity and stakes tend to increase, however, perhaps accounting for the overall perception that adolescence is a period of high discord. DeGode et al., 2009. Given that psychologists have noted the functional role of conflict, it's reasonable to suspect that this common feature of adolescence might serve a purpose, and that perspective may also help us understand its common sources. Adolescents undergo dramatic physical, cognitive, and social redefinition. Parent-adolescent conflict could be both a driver of this redefining of roles and qualities, and a consequence of it. Brange et al., 2012, Collins and Sternberg, 2006. Adolescents' new reasoning skills, including hypothetical deductive reasoning and the ability to think abstractly, often lead to the de-idealization of parents. That is, teens see a mismatch between the values their parents proclaim, the rules they put forward, and the way imperfect parents lead their own imperfect lives. Those same reasoning skills, which parents, teachers, and society at large all encourage, can lead adolescents to imagine an alternative world in which the rules are just a bit different and not so unfair. One way parents can avoid this tension and struggle is by simply admitting when they make mistakes and taking steps to involve the adolescent in open family communication regarding major decisions or interpersonal conflicts. Across adolescence, autonomy and self-determination grow, and the roles teenagers take on change as they are granted more responsibility. Mastro Theodoros et al., 2019. Teens' changing physicality also means that parents and other adults in the community may expect more adult-like behavior from them as they start to look more like grown-ups on the outside. But it is important to remember that on the inside, their frontal lobes are not yet finished developing. When teens make mistakes, both they and their parents might feel disappointment and frustration. Adolescent-parent conflict makes sense then, when we consider the totality of the psychological and social circumstances in which adolescents find themselves. The negotiation and resolution of this friction can lead to a more egalitarian relationship between parent and child. Brange, 2018. Conflict declines with the parent's gradual release of control as the adolescent learns to make their way in the larger world. Arguments about household chores, curfews, appearance and dress, use of a family car, and spending money all make sense from this developmental perspective. Allowing teens more freedom within a structured environment can reduce conflict and improve family well-being. Adolescent caregiver relationships are more likely to stay healthy and harmonious when adolescents believe that their caregiver's rules are there for a good reason and are reasonable, and when caregivers and adolescents continue to have open, respectful communication. Smetana et al., 2006. Family structure. Developmental psychologists have long been interested in the role family structure may play in child and adolescent outcomes. Researchers have investigated a variety of such structures, including two-parent families, single-parent families, multi-generational families, and step or blended families. The differences observed are probably due to the different ways family members function and interact with one another, more so than to the family structures themselves. In other words, many different family types can thrive or have difficulties, often based on complicated contextual factors such as family resources. Disparities in resources, such as available income and the ability to monitor children, also factor heavily in producing different outcomes. Decades of research on family structure and outcomes have shown a consistent pattern. Children and adolescents in two-parent households fare better across a range of physical and psychological measures of well-being. Savell et al., 2023, Langton and Berger, 2011, Parasha et al., 2023. A higher percentage of adolescents in both single-parent and step-family households exhibit more negative behavioral conduct, such as acting out, and higher levels of depression and anxiety than adolescents in two-parent households. Parche et al., 2023. In a longitudinal study of German families, adolescents in step-families reported particularly low-quality relationships with their parents, compared to teens in single or two-parent families. Walper and Beck, 2010. Similarly, in a longitudinal study of families in the United States, disruptive behavior reported by teachers was lowest for children in two-parent families. Savell et al., 2021. Another study using a large-scale national survey in the United States found adolescents in two-parent families often had better overall physical health than those in all other family structures. Langton and Berger, 2011. This may be because having two caregivers to share the various family roles and responsibilities can reduce caregiver stress. This pattern was also reported in a recent large-scale national survey of Korean youth, Park and Lee, 2020, with some additional findings. Adolescents from families other than two-parent households showed higher levels of risky behavior, such as drinking and smoking, higher levels of suicidal ideation, more stress, and lower perceived level of academic performance. In essence, the scientific literature has been reporting the comparative benefits of the two-parent family for quite some time. But what is it exactly about family structure that causes these observed outcomes? Recently, scholars have noted that two-parent, sometimes called intact, families have enjoyed a type of privilege in both our culture and scientific investigations. They have sought to identify the links between a family's composition and the well-being of its members. Socioeconomic status is one such link. Studies of families in the United States, Savell et al., 2023, and Germany, Parache et al., 2023, found strong associations between SES and adolescent well-being. Two-parent households typically have more income and other resources, such as time, available for benefiting household members. The financial strain that comes from having fewer resources could contribute additional stress in other family structures. Other factors include the level of parental monitoring and parental ability to protect family members from adverse health conditions that result in accidents and injury. Langton and Berger, 2011. The negative findings for stepfamilies may seem confusing since these families have two parents. However, stepfamilies tend to experience lower income levels, greater potential for within-family conflict, and less stability. Government policies and programs can be informed by recognizing the role these factors likely play in child and adolescent outcomes. For example, as a society, we may look for ways to support single-parent households financially through tax breaks or other programs in order to increase positive outcomes for children and adolescents living in this common family structure. Assets and activities supporting positive adolescent development. In considering how to support optimal conditions for adolescent development, researchers at the Search Institute, Peckel et al. 2015, created what is called the Developmental Assets Approach. It identifies 20 internal qualities and 20 external qualities that should be nurtured during youth. The external qualities include those that can be supported through resources like families, educational environments, and the broader community. Examples include positive peer influences, motivation to achieve, family support, and a favorable outlook of one's future. Research suggests that development of these assets is aligned with behaviors such as having academic success, valuing diversity, helping others, resisting risky behaviors, and having the ability to overcome adversity. Peckel et al., 2015. The goal is to ensure that, as teens mature, they benefit from a community that values and includes them in decision-making, provides a safe environment, and sets clear expectations and boundaries. Riek Partain, 2015. A supportive environment allows adolescents to engage in meaningful activities, align with like-minded peers, and contribute to their community. This approach to applying developmental psychology to improve lives aligns with the positive youth development perspective. Lerner, 2005. Lerner, Dowling, and Anderson, 2003. Roth et al., 1998. Which integrates various protective factors and resources to foster healthy development in children and adolescents. Positive youth development focuses on promoting positive outcomes and emphasizes a hopeful environment and opportunities for growth by engaging youth in a variety of enrichment and health promotion programs. According to Lerner and colleagues, 2005, positive youth development programs should focus on 5 C's: competence, character, confidence, connections, and compassion. Lerner et al., 2005. And should set high expectations for achievement and provide continuous support, mirroring high-quality parenting and educational best practices. According to the CDC, These types of programs can strengthen an adolescent's sense of identity, as well as their competence in social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral domains. CDC 2022. Availability of and access to youth activities and programs can vary greatly. Your community's school system and local library may be good resources for learning more about what offerings are available in your community. Many programs are run through governmental resources, including school systems, nonprofit groups, faith-based entities, and recreational organizations. Community programs may be run through local government sectors, like a public library, or the combined efforts of those with others in the community, such as area businesses in the Chamber of Commerce, or local branches of nonprofit organizations such as Girls Who Code. The 4-H program is an example of a national youth development organization run in association with the extension/outreach divisions of universities, with programs that seek to promote activities like service to the community and a healthy lifestyle. A comprehensive evaluation of 4-H, Lerner et al. 2015, identified a number of long-term benefits, such as a higher level of engaged citizenship through high school, decreased risk for problem behaviors, higher academic performance, and a greater tendency to endorse and exhibit health-promoting attitudes and behaviors. Involvement in community programs like these can help developing adolescents to explore new interests, learn more about their communities, and consider roles they may want to continue within these contexts. Figure 10.15. Many communities have recreational departments that offer youth activities, often including organized sports, classes in art, music, and dance, and various camp-type programs for specific interests. Recreational opportunities are often available through organizations like Girl Scouts and Scouting America, which encourage youth to try new things, help others, improve self-confidence, and build strong ethical standards. And in the case of Girl Scouts, develop financial literacy. Girl Scout Research Institute 2020, Modi et al. 2012. Recent studies highlight the positive impact of Scouting on youth development, such as higher levels of civic engagement and social responsibility, Kim et al. 2016, Polson et al. 2013, and improved mental health and resilience, Wang et al. 2021. Organized sports offer another important context for positive youth development, with programs offered through school systems, local government recreational programs, and other sports organizations. The benefits of participation in sports include better mental health outcomes, reduced anxiety and depression, increased leadership and team-building skills including cooperation and other pro-social behaviors, and positive effects on physical health and overall physical development. According to the Project Play study, regular participation in a team sport among teenagers between ages 13 and 17 years in the United States was at 36% in 2022. However, these programs are often less accessible to those in low SES households due to factors such as affordability and transportation. Aspen Institute Project Play 2023. And although high schools in the United States have increased their awareness and access to adaptive sports programs, Carbone et al. 2021, in recent years, there has also been a decline in the participation and activity levels of youth with disabilities. McEachern et al. 2021. Some teens may choose to become involved in faith-based groups. This may entail participating in important stages of religious development during adolescence, such as a bar mitzvah or religion classes. Figure 10.17. Other activities connected to faith groups may be more social in nature, offering teens peer group support. 51% of all U.S. teenagers have attended a religious youth group at some point in their lives, while 29% currently attend such group meetings regularly. Pew Research Center, 2020. Being curious about their spirituality, the meaning and purpose of life, and their place in the universe is a common characteristic of adolescents, including those who profess no particular religion. Pew Research Center 2019. A recent study surveyed Singaporean youth and found that individuals with a religion had higher overall positive mental health scores than those without, and that various religions had different benefits. Christianity was linked to higher emotional support, Taoism, Buddhism, and Islam with better coping and support, Hinduism with better interpersonal skills, and Sikhism with both better support and interpersonal skills. Vengankar et al. 2021. Employment during adolescence is another way teens engage with their community. Is working during adolescence beneficial? Before the 1938 Fair Labor Standards Act was passed, children and adolescents routinely entered the workforce, sometimes laboring alongside, and sometimes competing with, their parents. Federal and state laws still allow adolescents to work, but they limit the start and stop times and length of the workday. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 37% of adolescents ages 16 to 19 years participated in the workforce in 2024. This number includes many teens who work as part of their high school's career, technical, and agricultural education programs that provide an apprentice-like transition between schooling and adult employment. One of the societal benefits of adolescents working is the many billions of dollars they contribute to the economy, much of it spent on items such as fast food, clothing, and entertainment. Many teens also contribute their earnings to their household's finances. The psychological benefits of teenage employment include a growing sense of pride, financial autonomy, purpose, and self-esteem. Those who work also learn about the value of money. The price of this pair of jeans means I have to work 5 hours. Develop valuable life skills, such as time management and a work ethic, and meet others, including adults in their communities. Mortimer, 2010. However, there are several potential downsides to teen employment. Parents and teachers worry about the reduced time and energy available for schoolwork. Another concern is having teens work alongside older individuals, which can expose them to negative influences such as underage drinking and smoking, especially in social settings outside the workplace. The balance between work and academic pursuits can also be affected, though SES plays a part as well. Some teens may work because they need to in order to contribute to the household income, contribute to expenses like car insurance, or to start saving to live independently, particularly if they are in an unstable home environment. Other adolescents may work to afford certain material goods, such as purchasing a video game they want, or their first used car, or luxury items like a special pair of sneakers or some bling. Some teens may take jobs to fund special experiences, such as an opportunity for a short study abroad trip with their school's foreign language program. Still others work to gain valuable experience for college applications, trade programs, or other employment and career goals. These differences in motivations and resources can dramatically change one's experience of entering the workforce and subsequent job satisfaction. Adolescents, their families, and school counselors should weigh the individual circumstances and aspirations of teens who seek employment to ensure a balanced approach that supports both their academic and personal development. In all, whether through schools, community resources, or interest-based groups, involvement in activities and programs can help adolescents in developing self-esteem, a sense of purpose, healthy social relationships, and connection to the community, which altogether can promote socio-emotional well-being.